Welcome everyone to Talking About Preservation. Preservation Connecticut's weekly chat about preservation issues. And today we're really excited to be talking about protecting the history of Bridgeport's Little Liberia. And we have Maisa Tisdale, the president of the Mary and Eliza Freeman Center for History and Community. And we have Symphony Bailey Green, AIA, an architect with Northeast Collaborative.
She's our architect.
So if you don't know Preservation Connecticut, we're a statewide nonprofit historic preservation organization. This is an image of our boarding house, our headquarters in Hamden, Connecticut on Whitney Avenue. We are a staff of 8. I'm Jane Montanaro, Executive Director. Christopher Wiegren, our Deputy Director. He's our in-house architectural historian. He writes our bi-monthly magazine, Connecticut Preservation News. He is a published author of a recent book, Connecticut Architecture, Stories of 100 Places, and he administers our easement program. Renee Tribert is our Making Places and Preservation Services Manager, and she works with developers and municipal leaders to try to encourage development of historic mill sites. And she is the leader of our fee-for-service work. We work with developers on tax credit applications and National Register nominations. Jordan Sorensen is our development manager and special projects. She works on all of our membership and development activities, our communications, and she works on the fee-for-service projects as well. Kristen Hopewood is our development assistant, and she supports our development efforts, working with our membership, planning our events, administering our historic properties exchange, and doing our social media. And we have 3 circuit riders who are our boots on the ground, who go out into your communities and meet with folks on a daily basis to talk about preservation matters. Mike Farino, Brad Scheid, and Stacy Vero. So Preservation Connecticut is the statewide. We work in partnership with the State Historic Preservation Office. We were established in 1975 by a special act of the Connecticut General Assembly as the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation. And we changed our name to Preservation Connecticut in January of this year. So these programs help us fulfill our mission in these COVID times where we are anxious and eager to be in the communities and speaking with people and meeting with you and promoting preservation issues. So we're so happy that so many people have joined us and so many wonderful partners and guest speakers have signed up to come on. So as part of our ongoing work to always be available to assist with any preservation issues, we are pleased that this program helps bring folks together to talk. So I want you to feel free to ask questions at the end, put questions in the chat, and we can always follow up afterwards too if there are more questions. So with that, I am going to try to share. Maisa, you want me to go right into the video?
Yes, please do. See, I was a coward and I asked Jane to do it.
So lovely. It's a 6-minute video, but it's a lovely overview of all the work that they've done at the Freeman Center. So hopefully I can do this. I need to share screen again. Optimize.
I'm gonna sing till the spirit moves in my heart. I'm gonna sing till the spirit moves.
I'm Maisa Tisdale, and I'm the president of the Mary and Eliza Freeman Center for History and Community. And right now, we're standing in the heart of historic Little Liberia. This is Walter's AME Zion Church, the oldest surviving African-American church in Fairfield County, and right across the way are the Mary and Eliza Freeman Houses. This church was built by three men. One of them was the founder of Little Liberia, Joel Freeman, Mary and Eliza's brother, and they found that there really wasn't a role, there really wasn't a place for them, status for them as free men. And that's why people really started this community, to be safe, to offer sanctuary, and to prosper using their God-given gifts and talents. Little Liberia turns 200 years old in 2021. The Mary and Eliza Freeman Houses are just a block away from here. They would have stood big and bold, and they would have been really prominent on the block. One of the challenges that we faced from getting people to understand and embrace the story was the fact that there were no photographs, that all of the other buildings had been torn down.
To see it from that perspective makes me feel the presence of the ghosts of the other buildings that have been lost, and like recognize the sturdiness of these that are still remaining.
I can just picture Mary and Eliza Freeman coming out in the morning on their porches, looking across at this community that was around them, that was both beautiful with gardens. I bet they could hear the choir singing from the church as they walked this way. This was a planned community, an early planned community where people of different socioeconomic levels, different levels of education lived together. It was a sanctuary city, and it was very much an inclusive place. It was a place where people visited from all over the U.S., and they wanted to take advantage of this new invention called the railroad. For those of us who studied Little Liberia and the Freeman Houses, this community was alive. We could see it in our minds, we could hear it, we could smell the flowers, we could hear the bustle, but how did we share that with everyone else?
Thank you for making the learning experience easier and more enjoyable. Oh my God. I can't read it. This is so nice. Dear Ms. Shauna, thank you so much for your tour and teaching of Little Liberia, all about the past and how it impacts us now. Thank you so much for your time and support. Lots of love. And this is when we were standing outside the house. That's when they got to ask questions about the history, and they first walked up. For the first few minutes, they just stand there staring and like taking it all in and getting an understanding of, you know, the shape and the levels. And so they really just absorb it, and it's almost like they saw something they've only imagined for the first time.
Little Liberia wasn't the only settlement of free people of color that was an underground railroad destination community that offered sanctuary, but it's the only one that's left. It's the only one that still has original buildings on their original foundations. It's endangered. It's the last of its kind. So we don't have a chance to go back in time and save those Liberias. They've been plowed under, knocked down long ago by urban renewal. But we can save this one.
And then maybe the longer term project is the development of this site into housing and the Center for History and Community, you know, the sort of like more built out version of this. So that's one of the two kind of design drawings that we're going to have. But I also want to show you sort of the rest of the sort of structure for the document, again, all in draft form. So like, for example, this image here, I love, and there's a whole, you can find many of these images where like the ghosts of historical structures are actually felt in the landscape. Are you okay? I didn't realize you were crying. can't tell if that's good or bad. It's good. Okay, it's good. Well, we've only just begun, Maisa. Wait till you see the end results.
I'm gonna sing till the spirit
We are planning a community in the South End for the future that is inclusive, that is inviting, and that helps people live up to the aspirations of this nation the way it was supposed to be.
Well, thank you for that video, Maisa. That was really touching.
Yeah, that was very nice.
Thank you. So I'd like to take this time to tell you a little bit about the Freeman Center. Well, I first got involved with the Freeman Center in around 1989 or so, with the Freeman Houses and the effort to save them. I was a volunteer like so many others. And once the houses were put on the National Register of Historic Places, many people thought that that meant they were fine. They were safe from demolition. And there was also a belief that, you know, the local chambers of commerce and areas would just be so excited about this heritage that they'd come to the rescue. Well, the community learned a preservation lesson that so many of us learn, that being on the National Register of Historic Places doesn't mean that you're safe from demolition. And many people thought that it was a landmark when that happened and that it was safe. So we went through a number of years with the help of Preservation Connecticut, with the help of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, where we were able to work out arrangements with the city, and so that the houses weren't in danger of demolition anymore. I'd say that it took a good 10 years to begin to educate people about the history of these houses. I don't think that anyone in Bridgeport, including Bridgeporters themselves, felt that or believed that the city contained cultural assets of such national importance. And so that was something that we had to teach the city as a whole, residents, over a period of time. The African American community was extremely excited about these houses, as were many of the residents. People were just wanting something that confirmed that their lives mattered and that they could enjoy a spirit of self-esteem. And Bridgeport has so many negatives that appear about it in media, that it was important to share this heritage. And what was surprising to me and welcoming to me personally was that the houses became a project that allowed the participation of people from different areas of life, different professions, different socioeconomic backgrounds, all different kinds of agencies. The story was compelling enough to bring people together who had been separated by all different kinds of barriers before. So there were periods of years between the recognition and the founding of the Mary and Eliza Freeman Center, where we continued to teach about the significance of the place and work to try to raise money and awareness so that the houses wouldn't be in danger of demolition anymore. In 2009, the Mary and Eliza Freeman Center became the owners of the houses. And at that point, we did strive from that point on to try to find funding for the restoration of the houses. So just speeding along to the end, right now, our project is in good shape. We have a lion's share of the funding for this project, $1.6 million. $1 million of it is from the Good to Great grant from the state of Connecticut. And then SHPO was extremely helpful. They advocated for us. They talked to other offices and government agencies, and they managed to bring more funding into the project from the city of Bridgeport and also from the Department of Housing. We are going to serve, one of the houses will be a resilience center for the community. We've always been very active in Resilient Bridgeport and efforts for remediation of the impact of sea level rise in our area. So that's all I'll say right now, and I'll just leave the rest for the end when we have questions and answers.
Wonderful.
So
Thank you, Maisa.
now you'll hear from Symphony, and she is actually our architect. And I just smile every time I see her. She's worked extremely hard, and I can imagine that Mary and Eliza are very welcoming to her every time she steps through their doors.
Thank you, Maisa. I do want to share a screen. I'm not sure if I'm able to, Jean. Let's see. Oh, great. This is kind of a snippet of a presentation I did regarding Mary and Eliza and resiliency and sustainability. So I'll just give a little bit here, and Maisa touched on quite a bit already regarding, restoration and revitalization of not just the houses, but the history and the community and what it's going to bring to Bridgeport. And so as you see here, there are a few images that Maisa had that she was able to share with us about reimagining Little Liberia, but also some homes kind of that time period for us to kind of see and see, what they looked like, what the materials were used and such, as we embarked on restoring these homes that have very little photographs of them themselves. We are lucky, and I'll show later on, there are some, original pieces still there, which is great. And we're able to restore those, recreate when needed and such. Maisa also talked already about, community. And so Mary's house will be a living museum that will be, time period back that, we will be adding. She had a couple additions we're going to be adding on for kitchens. All of the interiors will be restored and such, and new pieces obviously to bring to match existing of elements that are no longer there, so you can walk through it like you would other living museums and get the feel and the furniture and everything as if you're back in that time period. And then for Eliza's house, there'll be the apartment and then also the resiliency center that will tie the houses to the community still, and that teaching and that broader history of the city and of that era, and for folks to learn. And so obviously for the future, we're talking the resiliency center, but also the reuse of materials. It's in a historic site here. And I don't know if many know, it's currently in a flood zone. So we will, even being in a flood zone for all these years, they've lasted 100+ years. So obviously there were some things that they built right that we want to make sure that we keep and we build upon that so that they're around for another 100 and 200 years to go. And so, obviously we've looked at a lot of materials, and then, for some modern day energy and life cycle cost, again, to keep that for the houses, but also to show the community and that impact on the community on the resilience of the homes. Recently, Maisa and I talked about some of the interior materials and being able to show, the community, the existing walls, so like we're not going to replaster everything. We're going to leave some of these existing stud walls, visible for folks to say, hey, this is the original piece. You can see it. It's not hidden anymore. See what it looked like. You can compare it to today's world. And like I said, she's been able to hold on to, and after all the change of hands, after all the sitting vacant, some things that are original, that are allowing us to be able to really restore it, to those time periods that we know what it looks like. We know what the materials are. We know how they made it, and us being able to go out and find, right now we're going to be getting into the stage soon where we go out and we find those contractors, who so specialize and who really know how to do this work to help bring it back to life and things. So, obviously too, we have some energy things we'll be dealing with that they didn't deal with back then to help, keep the buildings to withstand, climate and things moving forward. But ultimately, when you look at and go by and visit these homes, you will see the materials that they used, the look that it had, and be able to get that feel, and how these sisters built their homes. As you can see, they're different. The sisters were different. Their styles were different. So the two homes are different, and they're going to each, evoke different looks, different feelings, and different senses of pride for the community here. So we're very excited to be involved in this, and great little history too about the sisters were, they also rented out part of these homes at one period in time. They didn't necessarily live in both houses, the entire house themselves. So the fact that Maisa is able to, have an apartment in one, similar to how the sisters did, and just, being able to bring that back, and kind of that vision and purpose back into this community is great, and we're excited.
Thank you, Symphony. Maisa, did you want to go to questions, or did you want me to share the next video?
Okay, I would like Jane to share the next video. We're also working with Mass Design Group on creating a climate resilient heritage zone. And the idea is that the restoration of the Freeman houses, from the very beginning, the vision was to use them as a catalyst to revitalize this community. So this is a little bit of what we're hoping to do, a vision. This vision is our very, very first step in the process. And this design is the result of a meeting with our neighbors, because we wanted to give the community a voice in what their neighborhood looked like. It's the second link. There you go.
To see the Freeman Houses from above, nestled in the South End neighborhood of Bridgeport, is to experience the enormity of the industrial, economic, and environmental forces acting on them over generations. Yet they stand in resolute insistence. They insist on a future that honors their past, a future shaped by nourishment over extraction and justice over profit. Here we present a vision for the Freeman Houses as the center of gravity for the Mary and Eliza Freeman Center for History and Community. The center, built on the footprints of the original Little Liberia structures and designed into a floodable landscape, will anchor the growth of a mixed-use development in conversation with Seaside Village and the neighboring cottages. A visitor center, museum, meeting space, garden, education and research hub, gallery, and marketplace will make space for cultural and economic community building. The Freeman Center development, in turn, will anchor a placemaking network that traces its way through the South End, revealing the many complex layers of history, remediating industrial infrastructure, and reconnecting the neighborhood to the rest of the city. South End residents will be invited to contribute to the network of sites as it grows over time. As one stop on the placemaking trail, a viewing platform behind the Freeman Center will provide elevated 360-degree views of the South End and make legible the ongoing transformation of the neighborhood from an industrial coastline plagued with flooding into a resilient urban landscape that welcomes water. Over time, other development sites will build on the momentum of the Freeman Center, and the South End will live into its legacy as a neighborhood of cultural vibrancy, historical significance, and community stewardship.
Well, that says it all. So now we'll take questions.
Whoops. There were a couple of questions that came in the chat earlier. What are your plans for being open for visitation?
Okay, so we're about 2 years away from opening. So we're not open for visitation right now, although we do a lot of on-site tours and talks and lectures. And with Housatonic Community College, they have a student docent program, and they've actually trained 8th graders to do walks of the neighborhood and also to talk about the houses. So we welcome people to the neighborhood. And in fact, when we did the deconstruction of the non-historic additions to the Freeman Houses back in 2012, and that was funded by the 1772 Foundation, HUD, the city. What was wonderful about that is we had over 1,000 people who knew that this was just a construction site, who came to actually visit the site. And that was the power of this sort of heritage. We had buses come with visitors, students come from universities. And so we will continue to do lawn chair lectures and walking tours of the area. And when the restoration gets far enough along, I hope Symphony will let us have hard hat tours. Symphony didn't say yes or no.
Yes. Yes, obviously, we have to follow all safety precautions, but yes.
No, we love hard hat tours. We'll be signing up.
Great. But if you want to come now, well, not right now because of the pandemic, but hopefully things will ease up in the spring and summer. We do have tours that we're booking now. Hopefully they'll be able to take place.
Thank you. If anyone else had a question, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat or unmute yourself. We've got quite a few people on here.
I have a question for Maisa and for Symphony. Thank you for the presentation and for taking on this work and being so persistent over the last few decades, really, to make it become a reality. So I think as you're doing this, I imagine that you have this vision that goes beyond only this foothold in the community, right? How can you envision this expanding, what as a successful project? What could you see it doing for the greater Bridgeport community down the road?
Well, what we would like to do, we don't have site control of the lot across from us or other lots in the neighborhood. And so with mass design, we're hoping actually to have plans that we can take to funders, to the state, and to different government agencies that shows the community's vision of itself in the future. But what we really believe is that this can be a heritage, tourism site. But we're located near the re-emerging University of Bridgeport campus. And also there's a music venue right near us. There's construction going on the other side of Park Avenue. And we're well placed, as we always have been, to attract tourists, to attract students, and also other visitors to the neighborhood. So what we hope to do is really be a center and a magnet for cultural heritage tourism in the future going forward. It turns out that this community not only has ties to, say, the Underground Railroad, but it also has international ties. And there's been a lot of international interest expressed in the Little Liberia story and area. And we believe that that's something that can work for us. Little Liberia was a seafaring community, and what makes it really special, it was founded about 200 years ago by Native Americans and African Americans who were free and from Connecticut, and they were joined by counterparts from New York City, from the Eastern Seaboard, and other places. But because the founders were seafaring men, they asked for support from other free communities around the Atlantic. And some of those communities are also still, well, the communities themselves don't exist, but the nations and the countries of which they were part have programs, history programs, and tourism programs of their own. So we're really excited about that. So we're spreading the word about Bridgeport, about Little Liberia, about the Freeman Houses through our internet site. And we expect that our digital humanities footprint will be growing courtesy of help from Connecticut Humanities. And so we really hope to revitalize the South End in general, have a resource where community can actually take advantage of educational resources that aren't there in the present, and also a place for tourists and visitors to come.
Thank you
Mike.
for sharing all that great history.
Maisa, are there any descendants of the Freeman family involved in the project?
We don't know of, well, Mary and Eliza, as far as we know, they didn't marry or have children. They had brothers, and we know that one brother had children. So we haven't actually been in touch with direct descendants of the Freeman family, but there are descendants of other Little Liberia families who are involved with the center or have been in different ways. So Hugh Price is a descendant of Lewis Latimer, and actually 3 Little Liberia lineages. And then Adrian Farrar-Huell, who's on our board, is a descendant as well. And so we expect that as time goes on. Oh, there are descendants also among the Pagusset tribal nation as well. So there are descendants, and hopefully they'll all be able to play a part. Some of them are already playing parts right now.
Good.
Thank you. Someone wants to know.
Question?
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, hi. Well, I certainly admire the fact that you've got this funding and the houses. I have to ask, in terms of the renovation, did you see anything that had to be done right now? Had to be worked on right away? Because I'm doing a restoration of an old barn from 1869. We've got to do the roof right now.
Right. Well, we expect to begin our restoration in the summer. And, you know, between 2012 and in 2012, we did our first stabilization. It was more of a shoring up. And if we hadn't done that, I don't know what state the houses would be in right now. And then over the last couple of years, we've also done some, and Symphony can speak to this, we had to provide safe access to the site for the architects, for the engineers, for everyone who was planning and designing the houses. And so as part of that process, we also did some shoring up. But we should be okay between now and the summer.
Good, that's great. And I didn't know anything about Little Liberia. I had never heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, no one did, thanks to Charles Brilvich. I mean, the memory of Little Liberia had disappeared from modern memory. There was an article recently, I think, in a New Canaan paper, and it said, it was a wonderful article. Only one thing wasn't factual. It mentioned that the area was known as Little Liberia in the 60s, and it was not, because it wasn't rediscovered by Charles Brilvich until the 80s. So the houses were there, and Walter's Memorial AME Zion Church was also there, which is the original congregation of the area. As part of it is still housed in, well, the church is actually closed right now, but they're still in the area. But the history itself had been forgotten. And I'm just always grateful to Charles Brilvich for his discovery and the fact that he needed to have his pants hemmed one day. And there was a Cuban tailor and cleaners cobbled onto the front of one of the Freeman houses. And as he went there and got ready to step through the door, he noticed the houses behind the establishment. And that's how his research began. So that was in the 80s. Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's very good. I know Bridgeport a little bit, near the University of Bridgeport, but that's got to be 30 years ago or something like that. So I knew nothing of Little Liberia.
Well, the area from the railroad tracks to the start of UB, like going south, and from the water to Lafayette, that was Little Liberia.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And then where did the idea come up with? You mentioned the 360, the viewing point, something.
Oh, well, what we did is we took the ideas that our neighbors gave us in the preliminary meeting. I mean, that is the first representation of the ideas, and the fact that people wanted to be able to get a sense. First of all, they said that they didn't like the fact that the neighborhood was cut off from the rest of the city. And they wanted to be able to always know and feel that they were part of something larger. So over the years, like so many other Black communities, marginalized communities, over the years, the federal government put highways through and railroads through, and we have power plants, and the neighborhood has borne a disproportionate share of public, infrastructure. And so over the years, the South End has shrunk and people have felt isolated. So one of the things that people said is that they wanted always to have this feeling that they were part of something more, and for people to know that the South End was not always an enclave. They wanted to be, they wanted to have that feeling. And so having a tower that allows people to go up and look and see that this area is not sort of an island, within itself, that's where the tower idea came from. And also the idea of watching change over the years. So hopefully the community will have a voice in the revitalization of the neighborhood and they will be able to watch this from the tower and see how their neighborhood evolves over time with their ideas.
That's very good. Great.
Great, thanks for your questions, Tim. Maisa, in your presentation, you mentioned that you've raised the lion's share of funding for the project, but you still have a little ways to go. How are you filling the gap there? What fundraising plans do you have in place?
All right, so we think that the project will come in somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.6 million. And so we've been doing fundraising in the community. We had a fundraiser in November, which was very successful for us, and it was a lot of work by a lot of people. And the Heilmans were helpful to us, a couple that lives in Bridgeport. So we will keep on moving forward with the fundraising. So we're fundraising we fundraise for the programs. Capacity building is extremely important for us. So from 2009 to about a year and a half ago, I worked as a volunteer, and so did everyone else. I actually became the first employee about a year and a half ago. We expect to take on someone else. So we think that as we also build the organization's capacity, we'll be able to move forward. But we will work on a business plan. Ideally, we also would like to have, we don't want to be dependent on grants, and we also would like to be able to come up with programming that will provide income on a long-term basis. So we're doing okay, and we're doing okay because so many people have stepped up. I was telling Stacy, I felt like we'd won the lottery after the fundraiser, and it was so nice to be in community and have a chance to talk and reach out to people who have been with us for so many years, like you.
Well, it's your many, many years of hard work and dedication, and it's just so exciting to see this coming together. We've been trying to help as we could, but really it was all on your shoulders, Maisa. You've really been pulling this this through. We're
fortunate when it comes to African American historic preservation projects. Most of them don't make it as far as we did. And when we first started on this road to save the houses, we organized very much as civil rights organizations and movements organized. And it was important, though, that we had support from other places, from preservation groups like you and the National Trust, and that you could show us that way. We were embraced by the preservation community. And I think that's one of the reasons that our historical project moved forward. I don't know if we hadn't found you, if you hadn't found us, I'm not sure that we would have survived.
And I'm so impressed by, you've taken these two very fragile historic resources and really not only made a stewardship plan for those specific resources, but it's going to be a seed planted for so much else in the community. And it's just so exciting to see how you can take something that, people probably just passed them by for years and years and said, oh, they're just going to fall down. There's nothing special here. But to have the wherewithal and the determination and the passion to take those and make sure they didn't fall down and make sure that they have a real relevance and that their stories can be told, and that that's, to me, that's what makes historic preservation, like, it's just so important to make sure those fragile pieces of our history are saved. So someone would
I'm
like to
thinking
know
a lot
who's
about
Charles.
your work. And can I speak? I don't know.
Yep, go ahead, Tim.
I'm thinking a lot about what you put together here, because I think I'm living in Enfield, Connecticut, and there was a very big Shaker community in Enfield for about 160 years or something like that, and it's a very interesting story. But and there are a few Shaker buildings still around, but nobody's told that story in a very long time, and I'm curious about that. And I just wanted to say, I talked about that barn that I'm working on, and there's a house on that property that was a resting point for the Underground Railroad. And actually another colonial house across the street was as well. And I didn't know that in terms of the house history until the owner told me. So.
Very interesting.
Great, thanks, Tim. Sandy, you have your hand raised. Would you like to go ahead?
Okay, yes, thank you. I had a question which I think Maisha kind of answered. It had to do with the future and what would be, is or will be done for like residual income for the homes. But since she touched on it, I just want to commend Maisha for all she's done thus far. I just think it's absolutely amazing and stunning and just brilliant to me what her and others have accomplished for these homes. And I look forward to what's going to be done and walking down one of those paths, because I'm a South Ender and I'm just very happy and proud of her, Maisha, and what she's done. And I just want to say kudos. So thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. I mean, one of the reasons that we kept the faith was because of folks like Sandy, because Sandy's been involved in historical organizations in Bridgeport for a very, very long time. And
many years ago, don't say how old I am.
Okay, well, like last year. And it was important because Bridgeport, for some reason, has a great love of history. And even if the Bridgeport Public Library has a wonderful history center, and the place is packed all the time. People come to the lectures and they've collected information over years. And so I would say that genealogy and sort of public history it's a little closet industry, and people in Bridgeport are really interested in those kinds of topics. So when we had to have a show of people, when we had to ask people to bring themselves forward, people like Sandy, they were there. And so everything kind of came together for us. There was genuine community interest. There was a supportive preservation community, which also gave us the expertise we needed, because I don't know anything about building houses. I don't have that technical expertise. And during that period of time when the Connecticut Trust, the National Trust, and also now the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund, different historical organizations were always willing to come and help us. And we learned as a result. And it also, that information then was passed on to the community. And so that kind of network that we have and our ability to take things that are technical or scholarly and communicate them on, a sidewalk level is, I think, the role that the Freeman Center will embrace for generations, to be another resource of sort of hands-on and experiential education for an entire community. That's what we hope to be, and to feed that interest in history and the other humanities that are present in Bridgeport and just not highlighted enough. The bad things always get highlighted, but the love of arts and culture in Bridgeport, it's just been there and there for a long time, and that community stands behind us. So we hope to be the institution where those loves have a place to thrive, for generations. That's our hope.
Thanks, Maisa. Symphony, I was thinking as you were describing your work on this project, how this must be just one of those projects that really brings so many things together for an architect and a historian. And I just wondering if you had any other comments about being a part of this project that you wanted to share with us.
I would say, yes, it has been a great one. And the amount of, and I saw in the chat, somebody had asked about, some of the existing original materials. It's definitely one of those puzzles where there's quite a bit of existing, brick, wood, and those sorts of things, and figuring out the puzzle of what it actually, looked like on the interior, because there are so few pictures of the interior, and Charles and all of his research and work with, and all of the knowledge that he and Maisa have and such. So it's been great being able to kind of, work on that and kind of bring it all together for them. So it's very exciting, and we're very excited to see it in the end and kind of restore and bring that back to life. So it's been great. And as a woman, knowing what the sisters did and kind of their vision and such, and being able to help bring that back feels great.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I do see that someone asked about materials, and one of the houses had, I still scratch my head, because the houses were occupied until, what do you think, Sandy? Maybe the 1980s, 70s?
I think you're right, yes.
Right?
Yes.
But they still have the same doors from 1848, the same moldings from 1848. Like, no one said, oh, this molding is flat and crooked. Let me go to Home Depot. Let me change the doorknobs. I mean, I just don't get it. The same thumb latches. So we're fortunate that way, that for some reason, no one went to Home Depot and just started pulling things out. They lived with the same materials that were there from 1848. I would have been really bad for the house, because I would have probably pulled things out if I had moved in and seen like crooked moldings and yeah, but I'm just, and maybe the fireplaces that go nowhere, but no one did. So Eliza, Mary's house actually has a lot of original material, not as much as Eliza's house. And so that's why we'll be using that house for the Resilience Center. But our idea was never to house the Freeman Center in the houses. When we first did the charrette years ago, that the Connecticut Trust funded and sponsored for us with the National Trust, the community was very, very clear that they wanted those to be house museums. And so we planned for them and still plan for them to be house museums. And people always say, oh, well, house museums, they don't pay money, and there are all these, but Bridgeport doesn't really have a house museum that is an original house on an original foundation. And of the houses that Bridgeport fought to save, communities came forward and said, let's save this house. None of them were successfully saved on the same site. And most of them, when I think about it, were demolished. So we don't actually have a glut of house museums in Bridgeport. And we also knew that the mission of our organization was never to be sort of an old-fashioned historic society where you go in an old house and there are a couple of posters or plaques on the wall, and you walk in and you walk out. We really planned to be a cultural and education center, a digital humanities center, that brought scholarship about African American history and about local history to ordinary people who wouldn't ordinarily have access to it through activities, through programs, and through community service. So I never, when we started this project, imagined that it would take, I was like, oh, well, there are a couple wooden houses. We should have those fixed up in a couple of years and then on to the rest of the mission. So it was a surprise and it was an education for me.
Could I ask a question related to that?
Sure.
I think that's like a happy turn of fate, you know, that you get to inhabit the same buildings and kind of let the structures speak for themselves and kind of communicate that history in their substance, not just in a rhetorical way. And I have a question for Symphony. I can see that you're very sensitive to the historic nature of the houses. Could you speak about the importance of that to you, and also how you can see that, you know, how you envision them not just being old-fashioned, quote unquote, or like kind of a historical period piece, but something that's going to have a new life and kind of inhabit the future as well?
Oh, that's a tough one. Okay. I would say, you know, for me, I've been personally to a few, you know, house museums, you know, throughout my life, and, you know, growing up, and we would go different places, you know, Boston, DC, things like that, and see different ones. And, you know, for me, although one of my passions is historic preservation, sometimes history of certain things, not so much. But what always captured me, and I enjoyed, right, were those that not only preserved the houses, but brought that life where you walked in, and although it's a 1880s house and it's supposed to look and feel like an 1880s house or whatever, you know, the atmosphere that the people who are operating it have, you know, you don't feel like that. You know, you're getting that knowledge and such, but, you know, you just kind of go in and you're just like, wow, and you want to learn and you want to take it all in, and things. And so I think the way that Maisa's mission and how she's going to operate it is going to be in a way that, although you're stepping back into time, you're going to be able to still see and understand it relate to your current life, and that impact of how important, wow, you know, they did this back then. That's so much like we did now. You know, it makes you understand that whether we've grown as a society, there are still a lot of things that you can learn and that you may do from what people did back then, but you also understand why we do things today as well, right? It'll help you just understand things. So I think obviously the preservation of the houses themselves are just going to show you, you know, the visuals and the understanding of, you know, the materials and how it was put together, and, you know, that sort of thing, and show you a little bit of difference as to what we do now versus what they did back then on the construction. I think the feeling that you're going to get when you walk inside of them, you're just going to be blown away. I mean, going through, like Maisa said, going in Mary's house has more intact of original stuff, right? And just kind of going in and seeing the knobs and the this and the that, and it's like, right, people were still living with this. Nobody felt like this is too old, we need to upgrade this, you know. But you could feel, I'm definitely a spirit person. Everybody doesn't, you know, but you know, you could just feel it, and you could feel the warmth of it, you know, and the life that it brings. And it felt like home. It felt like an aunt's house. It felt like a whomever, you know, going in, and just and that's, you know, one of the things that I'm happy about, able to kind of help bring all of that back, you know, and back to life, and people can really go in and see it and feel it and understand it, and, you know, really impact their life moving forward and make them feel good. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. It's excellent to hear your thoughts and your spirit and your vision for this. And I'm so happy that you all had the strength and persistence in the vision to get this far, and can't wait to see it come together. And yeah, I want to echo that. I feel like when you walk into a building, like the soul of a building is kind of communicated by being able to see and feel who built it and what purpose they built it with. So I'm also thrilled that these houses didn't get that they're still standing and that they didn't get the HT. So kudos to you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Christopher. I know folks had more questions about Mary and Eliza, and if we wanted to continue to follow your progress and we contribute to the cause. What's the best way to stay in touch, Maisa, and to find out more? And
well, the best way is to go to our website. So that is freemancenterbpt.org. And if you send messages there, they actually come to me. So, and I'll respond. Since we've upgraded our site, thanks to Connecticut Humanities, I mean, in the old days, for some reason, you'd send messages and they'd eventually get to the back of the site somehow, but they come directly to me now. So that's the best way to stay in touch.
excellent.
And again, if you do want to come and visit when the weather permits, just contact me. And I know that the 8th grade docents would love to take people around.
Great, thank you, Maisa, and thank you
for having us.
Symphony, so much for being with us today. And thank you to everyone in the audience for your participation and for being members of Preservation Connecticut and for supporting the Freeman Center. We really appreciate all of your support and your encouragement. We will send out the slide deck for you all, and the meeting was recorded, so you can revisit that, and the links to the videos that Maisa shared, we can share those as well. And for next week, we have Ronan Mokriski and his students at the Salisbury School. They're going to be talking about their project Finding Slavery in Northwest Connecticut. So that'll be a really interesting program to tune into as well. So again, thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Maisa and Symphony. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
Thank you,
Thank
ladies.
you, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you. That was so cool. Very good, very good, very good. Enjoyed it.